Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave and Duncan here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, we've been checking out the new album from Long Island quartet Cryptodira. The band's new album, The Angel of History, will be released on December 4th via Good Fight Music. So, if you are new to Cryptodira, the band have been releasing music since around 2015, and The Angel of History will be the band's second full-length album. The album was engineered, mixed and mastered by Jamie King, who has worked with the likes of The Contortionist, Between the Bird and Me, Scale the Summit, Trioscapes, He Is Legend, and many, many more. The album was also produced by Jamie and the band. So, Duncan, Cryptodira, they're one of these bands that I'd heard of, but I just actually never listened to. They released a single earlier this year, and that was the kind of first time I'd actually sat and listened to them. I added it to our Spotify playlist. And for some reason in my head, I was expecting them to be a lot heavier.
Yeah, that's like off the cover artwork and the name specifically. Yeah. I was very surprised when I hit play on the first track, and then more surprised as the album went on. Yeah,
you know, don't get me wrong, they are a heavy band.
They have moments in here which are fucking like heavy.
But I was expecting it to be more kind of like in your face and more kind of full on than it actually was. I
think the production leads a lot to that. So it's a really interesting production on this album. There's some specific choices which I found like kind of incredible. Like there's a warmth to the tone overall. So it's less clinical than I was expecting, specifically with the shifts in genre that you go through here, because they take you, like all the tracks take you on little journeys, and those can go from like huge kind of swaths of kind of quieter melodic sections into the more kind of techier, kind of almost on some level kind of math metal style, kind of disjointed parts that hit in as well. And he has this really warm kind of, not analog, but there's a kind of analog-esque kind of warmth to the tone overall, which I think takes a bit of, on some level, makes it sound potentially less heavy. I imagine in a live setting it would sound a lot fucking heavier than it does here, but I actually think it made it a much more rich listening experience overall. Yep,
definitely. They are quite a kind of dynamic band, and more dynamic than I was expecting. I mentioned the guy who like engineered it and mixed it and mastered it and stuff, Jamie King. You know, he's worked with bands like The Contortionist and Between the Bird and Me, and I got a lot of that kind of light and shade kind of balance to this band's sound, so I could totally see why they picked to work with him on this album. The other band that popped into my head was Black Crown Initiate. From this year. I was listening to this probably more than the other ones I mentioned there, but like from the kind of get-go on this release, I could hear they were a band that liked to blend various kind of styles and ideas. That first track, Self-Affect Efface, on the vocal front alone, you've got so many different tones and textures on offer here. You've got gutturals, you've got the kind of more kind of high-pitched screams to like full-blown melody, and it was probably the melodies that were scattered kind of throughout this that gave me that kind of like Andy Thomas from Black Crown Initiate kind of almost like meets Thomas Giles from Between the Buried and Me, that kind of vibe. The vocal style and the tone was kind of very, very similar, and for me it was one of the things I enjoyed the most about this album. I think whoever is doing the cleans has an exceptional voice.
Yeah, there's a really rich quality to the tone, and it kind of, I think there's a smart place to use like melody specifically in bands as well. If So I wasn't sure if it was the same vocalist that was just doubling things up, or but what I loved about it was like every time the melodies come in, it just added it wasn't overpowering. It wasn't there to right. Here's a melodic hook, and you're going to be singing it or whatever. It was almost used as part of the instrumentation. Very, very, very cleverly. The way you would bring in like a warm sounding synth or something, to boost it out without necessarily distracting you from the technical stuff the guitar's doing, or what the through line is of a riff. They were all brought in clever parts. Whether that's to build up a song, but there are moments in here where you're coming off some really, really interesting, to the point where your eyes are moving, like trying to like work out like exactly where the kick is, and then they hit you with that melody, and it's this kind of right, relax, like breathe in, let's see where we're going, and then they'll very, very comfortably just throw in a really fucking heavy riff after it without like any warning. And that should, on some level, that should be quite jarring, but the beauty of the way Cryptodira actually approach their songwriting is that, and once again, I think it leads to the sound that they have in their production, is there's this kind of organic feel to everything. Everything feels like it has its part and its place within the confines of the song. So if you imagine the songs as all being little mini stories, which is how like I started feeling myself as I was listening to them, every part there is strategically placed to indicate an element or a growth of the song. And as a result, I found like on repeat listens of the group of albums that we had for this run, because we bulk record them, this is the one I've listened to the most. The reason I listen to it the most is there's been something to bring me back every time, and after every listen I've realised there's a vocal hook that I enjoy a bit more on the next listen, or there's one particular song where, like A Tendency to Fall, has at least one or two riffs in there that I overlooked the first time I listened to it, but every time I've listened to them I'm like, oh, here it's coming in, and it fucking hits you in a way which just makes me feel happy. And some of those moments aren't even the heavy riffs. Some of those moments are the quieter pick bits that just are really, really, really well constructed. I think this, as an album, like once again, I'd never heard of this band before. As an album, the re-listen value for me, not only as a musician, but as just someone that enjoys like music that challenges the listener. It's a delight to listen to. There was not one moment in here that I thought was poorly constructed or boring at all. From start to finish, all the way through, it is an exceptionally crafted album, and they pull in a lot over 8 songs. It's just under 50 minutes in length, and they bring in everything in a way where, and I think it was on a previous review that we've already done this, but if I mention a band like Cult of Lilith, who I find like they're on the heavier side, but they're bringing everything to the fucking kitchen, everything to the table. You'd like Cryptodira are doing it just in a different genre, and bands like Between the Buried and Me are a great example of the Contortionist. He is legend. You mentioned that the dude also worked with them. They're another great example of that, of a band that have a core sound, but on other albums will go down these little experimental routes before like hitting you with fucking really disgusting, really heavy shit, but very comfortable to slip back in and go a bit dreamy and a bit. And Cryptodira is like riddled with that. It's just a very satisfying listen by a very accomplished sounding band who you're saying are 2 albums in? That's fucking nuts.
Yep.
Really, 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 really good, man. The Blame for Being Alive, which is what I am calling 2020. As a year's the best fucking name for a song. So yeah, I think it's great. This is one that's going to be listened to the end of the year for me. I've already listened to it like about 5 times, so and that's saying a lot, because we usually only give ourselves about a week to listen to things before. So this kind of dominated the listening of new material for me. I've listened to this above albums that I am really looking forward to listening to, like Kill or Be Killed, for example, which has the new album is out, and I could listen to it, Dave. I haven't yet. Cryptodira took a little special place in the listener list, so there you go.
Nice. I really enjoyed this as well. Vocally, I thought it was stunning. I know both guitarists, Scott and Mike, do all the vocals between them. I'm not sure who does what, but I really liked it, especially on tracks like The Blame for Being Alive, where like the clean vocals are a real focus for a large part of the track. The heavier vocals are really good too. I think the variety of styles is something that really works for this band. And musically, you know, it's not that far away from some of the bands we've mentioned so far. You know, it's a technical album, but it's progressive. But Cryptodira have a moment where they will slightly kind of veer away from the kind of progressive metal or progressive death metal, and they go into that kind of more mathier side that you're talking about. You start to hear like little kind of elements of like Dillinger or Contortionist even at times as well.
Contortionist is a good shout, actually. It's a really good shout.
And I love those moments where, you know, they start to take those like almost kind of jazzier chords with the kind of odd time signatures. There's a couple of really cool moments on the album where they take those like those kind of off-kilter riffs and rhythms and they switch it into like a 4/4 groove.
Yeah.
It's just like, and when those moments hit, you're just like, oh wow, that's really cool. They really stand out. Really kind of gives you something to kind of grab onto and really get into the groove. I love that. I think this is an album that I got more out of the more I listened to it.
Yep.
I think my thoughts on this release have changed quite significantly since my first listen, which you know, it wasn't like an unpleasant experience by any means. It was just, as you said, it was quite a challenging first listen. But the more that I kind of got my head around the twists and turns of it and let the kind of melodies soak in a bit more, the more I really liked it. I still wouldn't say it's quite, you know, it's not on the level of like Black Crown Initiate for me. Yeah. But to be fair, those bands have been doing this a lot longer than Cryptodira. But I think after hearing this, I'm really confident that they most definitely have the potential to get to that level. Some of the tracks on this are absolutely brilliant, like Dante's Inspiration. Some of my favourite riffs on the album on that track. Absolutely loved that. And The Blame for Being Alive is, as I said, vocally fantastic. And I really liked there was a little bit of a female vocal that came in on that track as well. Really nice addition. I like that, the different tones and textures on that. Same with A Tendency to Fall. The melodies are really infectious. And I think, like, for me, it was probably the melody that really kind of heightened the listening experience of this album. A lot of cool moments musically, a lot of variation in style. It's very dynamic, as I said. It's not anything that I haven't heard done before, but it's done very well. And they're clearly a talented bunch of guys. In particular, I thought the drumming was excellent.
Yeah, all that stuff that you've mentioned about the techie elements, quiet moments, and all the rest, all that only works if the drums are spot on, and absolutely. They are here. They're really, really, really good. And he's not doing things that you're like, well, this is some of the best drumming ever, but he is not only keeping time with all the changes that the guitars are throwing them, but he's making it creative enough that there's moments where, like you were saying, where there's like specific time change switches which catch you off guard, and you're like, that feels a bit, and then when you, like, by the time it's like finished its first loop and it's playing it again, you're like, no, that was the fucking perfect. How did you think? I would never have done that. I would never have switched it to that. And all those things just, there's an art to that. There really is an art to knowing when not to showboat, but when to be clever enough to make what you're doing sound like not complex, but at the same time, if you know what he's doing, he's good at what he does, but he's not showboating at any point here. So I think it's great. Yeah, it works really, really well.
It's very, very inventive as a drummer, which is amazing to listen to. Like, as a drummer myself, I really enjoyed listening to his playing style. The kind of switches between are very, very seamless. You know, where he's switching between blasts into like that kind of more techie or mathcore style drumming. I thought it was really well done. I think that, like, if there had any like criticisms whatsoever, I think there were maybe a couple areas throughout the album that maybe lingered on a little too long, or maybe just didn't have quite have the kind of memorability factor until that kind of vocal hook kind of landed. But to be honest, the fact that it wasn't perfect just made me kind of more eager to hear how these guys develop going forward, because they clearly have all the tools. You know, the tracks, like I mentioned, Dante's Inspiration or The Blame for Being Alive, are kind of noticeable indicators of that. So yeah, like in conclusion, I really enjoyed this album. It has a lot of obvious comparisons with bands that we've mentioned, but and I think, you know, had like Black Crown Initiate not put out an album as stunning as they did this year.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you're like, and we're now comparing it all to that. It's that hard thing. I was there a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Anal Nathrak, and I'm like that in a year where Napalm Death hadn't put out, you know, this album, you know, Anal Nathrak's album would have scored higher for me, yet I've heard something that set a new kind of benchmark, and sadly I'm now going to have to compare things to that benchmark, which I didn't know I was going to have to do before. And that Black Crown Initiate album's fucking stunning. It's absolutely stunning. But there's, like you say, been on the go a lot longer, and I think Cryptodira have all the tools in place. There's just time is the only thing that's going to make that band better. Nothing else. You know, they just need to keep doing what they're doing, because they are... To pull off what they pulled off here is like there's a small percentile of bands out there that get it as good as they're getting it. And it's time and repetition that makes that better. You know, makes it more inventive, more crazy. As long as they don't check. This is the sort of band that I just want to see continue experimenting, continue pushing outwards. Because I think, like you, there's so much more to come from them, so I'm very excited about it.
Yep, definitely. Ratings for this new album from Cryptodira, The Angel of History. For me, as I've said, you know, if Black Crown Initiate hadn't put out an album like they did this year, in Violent Portraits of Doomed Escape, this would have been slightly different. I don't think this is quite on that level. I know they're different bands, but you know, there are comparisons. So with going with the fact that I gave that album a 4.5 out of 5, I'd probably say this is probably a 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, that's where I am. It's a 4. I think it's like I say, I've listened to it, I've spun it a lot. I can't guarantee at the end of the year it doesn't go up a little 0.5 for me. There's so much to kind of mine out of this. It's a really, really compelling listen, for all the reasons we mentioned before. But like I say, I think such a clever choice in the production here. I think if you make this a bit more polished, I think some of that enjoyment lessens off for me. The fact it was so warm and engaging a production on it, I think that's clever. And you said that they helped produce it. So they just need to keep doing that, because they clearly know what they want their sound to sound like, and that's how this music should sound. So yeah, they need to stick with it. They obviously have great instincts, and they just need to keep with that. So yeah, it's a 4. It's a great album.
Nice one. This is a high recommendation from us. It drops on December 4th. It's called The Angel of History, and if you want to check out the band, you'll find them out online at facebook.com/Cryptodira. I'll put a little link in the description below to their Facebook. Thanks for checking out the review, guys. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very, very soon. But until then, take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.